The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Industries' modern headquarters as Marcus Rivera finished mopping the polished marble floors of the executive lobby. At 38, Marcus had worked as the building's head janitor for 6 years, taking pride in maintaining the pristine environment that welcomed thousands of visitors each week. His blue maintenance uniform was always clean and pressed, and he approached his work with the quiet dignity of someone who understood that every job, no matter how humble others might consider it, mattered. Marcus had learned American Sign Language 15 years earlier when his younger brother Diego had lost his hearing in a motorcycle accident. What had started as a necessity to communicate with family had grown into a passion for deaf culture and advocacy. Marcus volunteered at the local deaf community center on weekends and had even taken additional ASL courses to become more fluent. It was a part of his life that few of his co-workers knew about, simply because no one had ever asked. From the second-floor balcony overlooking the lobby, CEO Victoria Sterling stood reviewing quarterly reports while observing the morning bustle below. At 41, Victoria had built Sterling Industries from a small family business into a Fortune 500 company, but she had never lost the habit of watching how people interacted in her building. She believed you could learn more about a company's true culture by observing unguarded moments than by reading any corporate report. As Victoria reviewed her documents, she noticed a young woman enter the lobby looking visibly distressed and confused. The woman, who appeared to be in her late 20s with shoulder-length brown hair and a professional gray suit, was approaching the reception desk with obvious frustration. Victoria watched as the woman tried to communicate with James, the morning receptionist, but something was clearly not working. The woman kept pointing to her ears and shaking her head, then pulling out her phone to type something. Victoria realized with growing concern that the visitor was deaf and struggling to communicate her needs. James, though well-meaning, was clearly out of his depth. He kept speaking louder, as if volume would solve the communication barrier, and his growing frustration was evident even from Victoria's elevated position. The woman's shoulders were beginning to sag with defeat as she tried multiple approaches to explain what she needed. That's when Marcus appeared. Victoria watched with growing interest as Marcus approached the situation. Without hesitation, he moved his hands in fluid, graceful gestures that Victoria immediately recognized as sign language. The transformation in the young woman's face was instantaneous. Relief, gratitude, and hope replacing the frustration and isolation she had been feeling. From her position above, Victoria couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see its effects. The woman's posture straightened, her face brightened, and she began signing back with animated enthusiasm. Marcus nodded patiently, occasionally fingerspelling what Victoria assumed were names or specific terms, and then turned to speak with James at the reception desk. The entire interaction took perhaps 5 minutes, but Victoria witnessed something that would stay with her for years. A moment of pure human connection, bridging what could have been an insurmountable communication gap. Marcus had transformed a potentially negative experience into one of welcome and inclusion. After helping the woman find her way to the appropriate elevator, Marcus returned to his cleaning cart with the same quiet efficiency he brought to all his tasks. The woman waved goodbye with obvious gratitude, and Marcus signed something back that made her smile broadly before the elevator doors closed. Victoria found herself deeply moved by what she had witnessed. But more than that, she was impressed by the skill and compassion Marcus had displayed. This wasn't someone fumbling through a few remembered signs. This was fluent, confident communication from someone who clearly understood deaf culture and community. An hour later, Victoria made an unusual decision. Instead of sending her assistant to gather information, she took the elevator down to the building's maintenance office herself. Marcus was surprised to see the CEO walk into his workspace and immediately stood with respectful attention. "Mrs. Sterling, is there something wrong? Something I need to address?" "Actually, Marcus, I wanted to thank you for something I observed this morning," Victoria said, noting his surprise at being addressed by name. "I saw you help a deaf visitor in the lobby. Your sign language skills were impressive." Marcus looked uncertain, as if he might be in trouble for leaving his assigned duties. "I hope it was okay that I stepped in. She seemed really frustrated, and James was having trouble understanding what she needed. It was more than okay, Victoria assured him. It was exactly what should have happened. How long have you been fluent in ASL? About 15 years, Marcus replied. My brother became deaf after an accident, so I learned to communicate with him. Then I got involved with the deaf community and kept studying. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. Marcus, are you aware that Sterling Industries has been struggling with accessibility issues? We've had complaints from deaf clients and employees about communication barriers, but we haven't found effective solutions. I had heard some things, Marcus admitted carefully. What if I told you that we're creating a new position, Director of Accessibility Services, and we need someone who understands both the technical requirements and the human side of making our company truly inclusive? Marcus stared at her in amazement. Mrs. Sterling, I appreciate the thought, but I'm a janitor. I don't have the business background or education for an executive position. Marcus, what you displayed this morning isn't something you can learn in business school, Victoria replied firmly. You showed cultural competence, problem-solving skills, and genuine care for ensuring everyone feels welcome in our building. Those are the qualifications that matter most for this role. Over the next several weeks, Victoria worked with Marcus to develop a comprehensive accessibility program for Sterling Industries. What she discovered was that Marcus brought insights no consultant could have provided. His years of experience in the deaf community had taught him not just the technical accommodations that were needed, but the cultural understanding that made those accommodations truly effective. Marcus proposed solutions that went far beyond basic compliance: ASL interpreters on staff, visual alert systems throughout the building, deaf awareness training for all employees, and partnerships with deaf community organizations for hiring and mentorship programs. You know what impressed me most about that morning? Victoria asked Marcus during one of their planning meetings. What's that? You didn't just solve a communication problem. You created a moment of genuine human connection. That young woman left our building feeling valued and included, not just accommodated. Marcus smiled. That's what my brother taught me. He said the difference between accessibility and inclusion is the difference between being allowed in and being welcomed home. 6 months after that morning in the lobby, Sterling Industries had become a model for corporate accessibility. Marcus, now Director of Accessibility Services, had implemented programs that had not only improved the experience for deaf employees and visitors, but had created a more inclusive environment for people with all types of disabilities. The deaf visitor who had struggled in the lobby that morning turned out to be Sarah Chen, a software developer who was interviewing for a position with Sterling Industries. Not only did she get the job, but she became one of Marcus's key collaborators in developing technology solutions that made the workplace more accessible for everyone. You know, Victoria said to Marcus as they watched Sarah present a new visual communication system to the board of directors, I learned something important from watching you that day. What's that? I realized that the most valuable employees are often the ones whose talents we overlook because we're not paying attention to the right things. I was so focused on quarterly reports and profit margins that I almost missed the fact that one of our most capable people was right here all along. Marcus looked around the conference room where Sarah was confidently presenting to executives, her ideas being translated simultaneously by one of the ASL interpreters who were now standard at all company meetings. Mrs. Sterling, I think what you really learned is what my brother has been trying to teach me for 15 years. Inclusion isn't about changing people to fit your world. It's about expanding your world to include everyone. Victoria nodded, understanding that the morning she had spent watching from the balcony had taught her more about leadership than any business conference or corporate training program ever could. Sometimes, the most important qualifications for a job aren't listed on any resume. They're demonstrated in quiet moments when no one thinks they're being watched, when someone chooses compassion over convenience and inclusion over indifference. And sometimes the most transformative business decisions come from recognizing that the people who clean your floors might also be the ones who can help you build a better company, if you're wise enough to notice their true capabilities and courageous enough to create opportunities that match their potential. If this story reminded you that everyone has valuable skills and perspectives that might not be immediately visible, Please give it a like and share it with someone who believes in the importance of inclusion and accessibility. Subscribe for more stories about recognizing hidden talents and creating opportunities for everyone to contribute their gifts. And let us know in the comments about a time when someone surprised you with abilities you hadn't expected. Sometimes the most important conversations happen without words, and the most valuable employees are the ones whose worth we almost overlook.